Let me ask you, have you ever thought that if you knew that particular thing earlier, you could have saved a lot of time and frustration? Have you ever thought, why have you never thought about it in the way before today? I know how you feel. And there is a perfectly rational reason for that. You basically moved from you don't know to you don't know. Let me ask you, what happens when we learn new skills that take us out of our comfort zone? When you learn a new skill, the beginning tends to be the most frustrating part. Often, you are not sure what you should be doing exactly and how you should be doing it. This applies to everything from when you start playing a new sport to when you start try speaking a new foreign language. Luckily, the process of becoming better at new skills is relatively predictable and can be broken down into different stages. Once you understand how this process works, you will understand why the beginning is so hard and you will be able to identify your position in the learning process. This will make you more aware of your abilities and more conscious of your learning and will help you learn new skills better and with more motivation. Research on this topic of human learning identifies four main stages to the acquisition of new skills, each of which represent a different level in the hierarchy of competence. Stage 1, unconscious competence. When the learner doesn't know what they don't know. This is considered the beginner stage, which you start at when you first encountered a new skill that you want to learn. This is the stage of blissful ignorance. This stage is characterized by the fact that you don't know what you don't know. As such, you're not entirely aware of what the new skills entails or what the goals should be, meaning you could end up making a lot of mistakes without realizing that you're making them. The individual must recognize their own incompetence and the value of the new skill before moving on to the next stage. The length of time an individual spends in this stage depends on the strength of the stimulus to learn. Moving on to the next stage, the stage 2 is conscious incompetence. When the learner realizes how much they need to learn, this is considered the intermediate stage, which you reach after developing some familiarity with the new skill that you are learning. As our awareness evolves into this stage, we begin to realize there is still a lot that you don't know, but you can now recognize what you don't know and what you need to learn in order to improve. As such, you still make a lot of mistakes, but now you're at least aware that you are making them. The making of mistakes can be integral to the learning process at this stage. Let's talk about the next stage, conscious competence. When the learner knows what they know and are conscious that they are learning something new. Learner know how, but he or she needs to think about and concentrate on what needs to be done. This is considered the proficient stage, which you reach after reaching a strong proficiency at the skill that you are learning. At this stage, you already have a good grasp of the skill and of what it entails, so that you make only a small number of mistakes while practicing. However, performing at a high level still requires a significant and conscious effort on your part. And a lot of things that the skill entails still aren't intuitive to you. Let's talk about the next stage, which is unconscious competence, where the learner is no longer aware of the skills and knowledge they have acquired. Learner knows and he or she can do it effortlessly. This is considered the mastery stage, which you reach once you develop a very high level of proficiency in the skill. The skill becomes so practiced that it enters the subconscious parts of the brain and it becomes a second nature. This is where we can do something effortlessly and without thinking about it. The biggest difference between this stage and the previous one is that performing at a high level is now much more intuitive and no longer requires as much conscious effort. This is the stage where the skill becomes almost a habit. We are able to be successful without concentration, and our conscious mind is free to take on any other things. Well, these are the stages that are often mentioned in various discussions of learning theory. However, some researchers also propose a fifth stage, which is called stage 5, unconscious supercompetence, which is similar to unconscious competence but at a higher and more effortless level, where the practitioner is aware of their ability to perform the skill easily and without conscious effort. Have you watched a master at work? Imagine Roger Federer. If you have watched tennis, this stage can be referred to as the mastery of the flow state. Let's take an example of these, how you experience these four stages in your own life. Consider how you learned to ride a bike. You started off being incompetent for sure. Before you know you could ride a bike or how you might even start to go about doing it, you were unconsciously incompetent. You didn't even understand how to ride a bike or bike can or even be rode by you. At some point, you hopped on a bike and swerved all over the place for the 4 feet you traveled before you hopped off and fell over. You knew that you were incompetent. Hence, you went to the second stage, conscious incompetence. Slowly, you figured out that it was all about balance. You knew what you had to do. Balance, lift your foot up and pedal. And steer too. And you were thinking about all of these things as you were riding your bike. Your 4 feet turned into 10 and then 100, then halfway down the block before you crashed because you tried to turn around in a driveway. You crossed over from being conscious incompetent to conscious competent. Somewhere in there. For a more specific example, the first time you get a bike with dual handbrake, one controls the front wheel, one the back wheel, you started off having to think about which brake to apply. You could do it, but there was always a partial second of thought like which one to do again. Then after a short while, you can hop on your bike and go. You can turn, you can brake, you're clearly competent. You can do those more things while thinking about how much of a bummer is that girl that doesn't like me, or your parents are mean, or you can't wait for your baseball game tomorrow. You're unconsciously competent. You're unconsciously very, very competent to do and ride the bike. right? Well, you're right. And one very, very important thing to note here is the Kaizen continual loop. It is not a step progression from unconscious incompetence ending in unconscious competence. Rather, one's goal should be maintaining a continual loop. Upon moving into conscious to unconscious competence in one skill, immediately identify a logical next step. Recognize your conscious incompetence at a related, slightly more challenging skill and bring it to conscious competence. And then work consciously on it until it happens more autonomously and then start the process all over again. It will help you to keep on working on your skill, keep on moving your brain better and better at that skill. It is because sometimes your brain moves you from unconscious competence back to unconscious incompetence subconsciously. You may be thinking that's not possible. Well, when you start doing the process completely unconsciously, that you forget that you know the skill, and sometimes change in the circumstances make you feel that you don't know it. Let me give an example. You have been driving car for several years and all of a sudden someone asks you to drive a bus. Your instant reaction will be, I don't know, right? Also, due to technological advancements at such an exponential rate, may cause you to think that you don't know the latest ways to do a specific process. However, if you constantly move yourself to conscious incompetence and learn it again, it will take very less time but will have a prolonged learning effect. Here is one more thing. The process actually involves a change in the physical location in the brain where we process cognitive and motor skill. During the conscious competence stage, we process in the cerebral cortex, an area with spatially dense neural connections. The cerebral cortex consumes a lot of energy, the same energy, oxygen, and glycogen used by the muscles. When we achieve unconscious competence, that activity is done by cerebellum, which uses far less energy. Each time we learn a new skill this way, we not only increase our mechanical efficiency, we also increase our energy efficiency in a surprising way. The main benefit of understanding this theory is that you will now have a better understanding of how your learning process works. When you're acquiring a new skill, this is valuable because it can help you identify the stage you are at in terms of competence, which will allow you to figure out what your biggest weaknesses are and where you need to improve, all without feeling discouraged. How awesome would that be, right? So, are you all set? Great. So, let's move to the next part of the course.